Okay, there's something I want to record, so I got to record. I was having a discussion with my son, and as usual, whenever I discuss with him, there is enlightenment. And why? Because basically, he is a space-time, almost equivalent to mine. So if I sort out his space-time, it would have automatically straightened out my space-time too. Okay, so what exactly is the discussion? Now, he was saying to me that he felt that everything that he's doing is quite meaningless. Meaningless because after all that is done, I don't know what I'm really doing. Because you go from success, and then after that you need another success. You go from one game, and then you finish it, and then you still need another game, and you keep on continuing doing that. You have an exam, you study hard for it, and then you have another exam. Life keep on moving round, and you're wondering what's it all about. And that's exactly what people feel if they cannot find their own presence. Then he was discussing that he couldn't find himself. Well, that's true. He's quite aware of that, so he couldn't find himself. And he realized that, and as we talk about it actually, we realize that he is concentrating on being watched. In other words, that if I feel that I'm being watched, then I will definitely expect to be loved by God. I will definitely expect to be recognized by my friends and etc. Because I'm not an entity, and unless I'm recognized by someone else because I'm just being watched, I feel myself empty. And for most people, they are getting used to being watched, that's all, and they forgot to energize the watcher. So after buying a food for us, he came back and realized that what's missing is the watcher. And I was very enlightened by that. Why? Because exactly what he said. You see, presence is the watcher. When you observe something, you observe it, and you're aware that you observe it, you are the creator. And if you are the creator, you don't have to be the creator, but just simply that you observe, it means you exist. Whereas if you are being watched, you don't exist, because it's just somebody watching you. And that somebody is creating you, but not you. Whereas if you observe yourself, then you create yourself. Just the act of watching itself is presence. I was quite shocked when I hear that, but I think it is absolutely true. Just the act of presence. A lot of people just is watch, but actually the action to watch itself is presence. And he was mentioning about that dream, okay? He was saying that we were discussing, and then we came to this point where I was saying that if I'm inside the dream, then that's a story, and the story is very important because without a story, without a world to live, without a dream, without a being watched, then what's the purpose? Life must have, the world is a watched world. So you need to be watched. But then I was telling him that it's of no value to be just there in your dream if you are not aware that you are the presence in the dream. Because if you are just merely one of the personage in the dream, then when the dream ends, it just simply ends. But if you are the watcher of your own dream, then what happens is that even when the dream ends, the watcher will remember that dream, and you're still alive. That is what it means by eternal life. Eternal life is to become aware of the watcher, the observer. So that's why it's important to be the watcher as well as the watched. So if you think of it this way, then you must be the watcher of the watched. That completes the process. And how? How would you become aware of yourself being the watcher? That's the key. When I observe the thought that observes the world, I fully realize that I am watching. That's the key. If you are just merely observing the world right now, without observing the thought that observes the world, then what is happening is that you are just a mere reflection of what you see all around you. Let me emphasize here, if I'm just merely watching the world, including myself, watching without watching the thought that watched me, but just simply watching me, what is happening is that it's not me who is watching, it's God who is watching me. And I'm just the mind of God. So I'm being watched. I'm not a watcher, but I'm being watched. You're just a being watched. That's the funny thing about it. If you merely walk in this world and you see your friend and talk to your friend, and you don't observe the thought that observes your friend, then what is happening is that you see a body, but you're not the true watcher. In order to be a watcher, you have to be aware that you're watching. And to be aware that you're watching, you have to be aware of the thought that is watching. And that is presence, based on the conversation that I had with my son. And it's indeed true. Because everything that I'm seeing right here now is actually the mind of God. It is the mind that gives me the idea of my body and the world I lived in. It's the mind of God. God is seeing it. It is God who is watching the world. But the nameless presence must realize that it is the mind of God that is watching the world, so that the nameless presence becomes the observer. That is why the act of watching your thought that watches the world is the act of the nameless presence owning space-time. Is the act of being present in this world, which is the mind of God. Finally, I'm very, very clear now why watching the world directly will not achieve the presence of the observer who watched. It will not. I have to be aware of the thinking that observes, because the thinking that observes is the mind of God. I have to be aware of the mind of God that actually watches me and the world. That's why I'm seeing it. That awareness is the awareness of the nameless presence within me. The mind of God belongs to God. The nameless presence also belongs to God. But my job is only to be aware of the thinking of the nameless presence. Yes, the nameless presence is thinking of the thinking. And That's how I become alerted to the presence or the nameless presence. And that's how I become the owner, the presence in this universe. It's just an awareness of the nameless presence who is watching the world. In fact, I don't really exist. Yes, because what is inside me is a nameless presence. What is all around me is the mind of God. Neither of them is me. But if I make a point as a human being in my duplex world to become aware of the watching of the mind of God, to become aware of that, then that becoming aware is an act of the nameless presence. And as a result of it, I'm also able to exert that presence of the nameless presence in my life. And as a result of it, I exist. I'm the observer. I'm the creator. So finally, it becomes very clear to me how a non-existing person can appear to be existing, how he can inherit existence. How? He simply observed the thought that observes the world. Because the observation of the mind of God is the act of the nameless presence. And when I duplicate that action, I participate in the presence of the nameless one who is. I participate in the presence of the nameless one who watches the mind of God. And as a result of which, I participate as God. That's how it means. I'm truly a God-man, but I'm not aware of it. So in order to be aware of it, I have to observe the observation that observes the world. I have to do that so as to participate with the nameless presence that watches the mind of God. Wow. This is why it's stated the gift of God. It's a gift of God. I'm just participating in the presence of the One Most High.